interviewing him was, I think, one of the most awful experiences I've ever had in my life, because he was really shy. He was like, his dad was there and he was okay with it. So I was like, let's just make this like quick. So I just need like what happened from him as kind of testimony. And I wanted to kind of throw up after that, because especially like as he's speaking in Arabic, and I had somebody translate for him, and he was saying that like he can't use the bathroom without being in pain anymore. And that just never leaves you once you've seen it.
Hi, we are Mustang News editors, and the podcast that you are about to watch was filmed in early October. This podcast was filmed prior to the major ceasefire deal that was agreed upon earlier this month.
Charlie Nichols, the subject of this podcast, is a dual journalism and political science major, but he has no affiliation with Mustang Media Group, and the views expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect those of Mustang Media Group.
And additionally, the content in this podcast may be a little hard for some viewers, so viewer discretion is advised.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the special edition of the Roundup podcast, kind of where KCPR and Mustang News comes together in podcast form. I'm Jeremy Garza, and I'm managing editor this year for Mustang Media Group, and I'm joined with
Carly Heltzel, and I'm the news editor for the Mustang News this year. So today we are talking to Charlie Nichols, who is a journalism and political science fourth year, and he spent the past 2 summers reporting from the West Bank and Palestine. And his goal was basically just to document what he saw there and what he experienced and what was going on. So can you tell us a little bit about where your passion for this project came from?
First, thank you for having me, guys. But so Project Walsh, which is kind of the name that I've umbrellaed over everything that I've done in the West Bank so far, started mainly my third year at Cal Poly. This was 2023, after the war in Gaza started, after the Hamas attack on Israel, and the resulting violence in the Gaza Strip kind of grabbed my attention. I think it grabbed a lot of people's attention, and I began to learn more about the history of between Israel and Palestine, and I wanted to be involved with it. I didn't really know how I wanted to do that, and I thought, well, I study writing. I've studied writing for a while. I'm kind of all right at it, so maybe kind of take that approach. And especially after learning some of the video editing skills at Cal Poly, I was like, well, I'll go there. And then my first idea was, I'm going to go to the border at Rafah, and that takes about a 5-minute Google search to realize it's not going to happen. And if you did get there, you would not come back. So the next step was, okay, well, the West Bank is also a place. And I'm also learning as this is going. I had an inkling of what was going on there before, but I decided to get over there, but decided on the West Bank. And I think I just Googled homestay program Palestine. I found a program there that takes in foreigners, and you basically you sign up for Arabic lessons, and they enroll you in a program. There's a few different places there, but the program that I found, it was in the city of Hebron, which is in the south of the West Bank. It's the most populous city. It's a pretty conservative Muslim city, but just to characterize it. And I signed up for that program, and then I spent months and months just researching the history to know what I was doing. I didn't want to just show up there and not have any idea what was happening. That would be pointless. And I think I had kept it all in this one kind of binder, or this one spiral journal that I had, and I think I got to 75 pages of just handwritten research that I was doing, which I was pretty proud of that and how I had it organized. I thought I got it looking all pretty. But
and how did your family and friends react as you started kind of going down this endeavor?
I think a lot of people, when I brought it up, it was kind of just I didn't really have enough time to explain it. But oh yeah, I'm gonna go do this, and they'd be like, all right, man, whatever you say. And so my parents were a different story. I kind of got an idea of everything I wanted to do, and I presented it to them as this is something that I would like to be involved with, and also more journalistically speaking, it's I want to cover conflict zones, and going there and doing it and learn by doing is kind of one of the better ways to do it, and kind of show people that you're able to handle the situation. And I took a little bit of finagling with my mom, but ended up obviously getting over there twice.
Yeah, and what made you want to go? Kind of, how would you describe the difference between the two times that you were there?
So, the first time was definitely more of a learning experience. I had spent so much time getting in contact with different people in the West Bank, and that no matter what you do, you don't really know until you get there. So I got there and I was meeting different people, learning different things, learning just enough Arabic to be respectful as well, and then the second time I was able to kind of utilize the resources that I had gained that first year. So I knew where things were, I knew good people to talk to, and I also, it's like just knowing how to get around, because you gotta know somebody who's like willing to drive to certain places, because not everywhere is safe there, obviously, if you're a Palestinian especially. But that was kind of a rough idea of the two. But another thing I'd add would be the second time was definitely much more intense. The situation in the West Bank right now is deteriorating very quickly. It's been deteriorating since the outbreak of the war in Gaza, and it's mainly like just extreme levels of state violence, like the state of Israel, and the government in the West Bank that kind of represents Israel. It essentially just is Israel, is called the Civil Administration, and they have full jurisdiction of over like 60% of the West Bank. And through their support of Israeli settlers, there's just been a massive increase in violence, and I've seen it firsthand. I almost died in one incident of it, but that's kind of another way to characterize it.
Yeah, and I think as we're sort of starting out on this path of describing where you were geographically, can you give a little bit of a distinction? I think a lot of people have heard about Gaza in the news recently. How would you characterize the difference between the West Bank and Gaza?
So the West Bank and Gaza at the closest point are only like 20 miles apart, and that's like the south of the West Bank. They've both been essentially occupied since 1967 by Israel. In Gaza, in 2006, Hamas won the election there, and shortly thereafter, Israel pulled all of the Israeli settlers that lived there. Actually, settlers might not be the best way to describe them, but there were Israelis living in the West Bank. The government was like, we're not going to support you living here anymore after Hamas won the election. They all moved out, and then the Israeli government destroyed all the houses that they were living in, so the Palestinians could not utilize the resources. And the situation there has always been much worse. And prior to October 7th, that people will refer to it as an open-air prison camp or a concentration camp. I find those words to be accurate. I haven't been there, but you can just, it does not take very in-depth research to find on what was going on there. There was stories of people, because if you were born in Gaza, if you went to leave, no matter where you're going, you need an Israeli visa. And there are people there that it just makes it very difficult. I guess I won't go too far into it because I wasn't on the ground there, and Project Walsh is very focused on just the firsthand experience, but it's very bad. And the West Bank is much larger than the Gaza Strip. There are Israelis that live within it. There are hundreds of thousands, I think, including Eastern Jerusalem is around 700,000 Israeli settlers in the West Bank, and they're just like dotted all throughout. And so that combination of Israelis and Palestinians, I think, contributes to one of the big differences is in Gaza, when there's open conflict, especially since 2006, and there's been a few Israeli military operations there, you kind of see that like in as are bombarded with on social media and on the news, just the blatant targeting of civilians and just the complete destruction with airstrikes and stuff, is you don't quite see that in the same level in the West Bank. Up north, there's a lot more resistance fighters there. There are airstrikes, but it's still not to the same level as Gaza, where it kind of gets turned into a moonscape. But so it's you can drive around to these like different places without kind of worrying about open conflict, at least right now while I was there. But I think to kind of hammer home the difference would be that like the West Bank is not kind of this like open wound that Gaza is I would say.
Yeah, and I think so many of us have seen like images and videos of these two places on social media. When you first got there, even as you were living there, how did the experience of seeing it through your phone versus seeing it through your real eyes kind of change your viewpoint?
I actually, before I got there, I was obviously pretty nervous just about like acclimating. And I just found that, everybody is just kind of people. And it was, you get there and you treat it like that. And it was easy to kind of get comfortable pretty quickly, especially the culture there. The Islamic culture there is very much they really value hospitality there. So it's people are just very kind, and it's easy to get around. I think I acclimated a lot quicker than I thought I would, actually, to say that. But the kind of seeing it like in person, especially the West Bank is a small place, and if you watch documentaries on it, like I have, there's specific places that you kind of always see. Like the old city of Hebron is a big one because it's it's a very intense place. It's always on in documentaries. So like seeing that in person was pretty I interviewed somebody that I had seen interviewed in multiple documentaries. And it's like kind of I was starstruck, but a little bit weird. And then especially when you go south into like the Masfariata area, which is the kind of a collection of villages. It's south of the city of Hebron about by 20 minutes. And when you get down there, there's the documentary Know the Land, which won an Oscar, that's like set there. And I'd watched that, and then I'd seen literally like the roads that they had like documented in that. I was like driving on them, so that was pretty weird. But
Yeah, and then would you mind telling us a little bit about how you arrived at the name for Project Walsh? Who is Walsh?
So, yeah, Project Walsh is named after the Argentinian journalist Rodolfo Walsh. He's some places will call him like the father of investigative journalism in Argentina, but he was an investigative journalist. He in the 1970s, Argentina had a military government that came to power through a coup. It's called the Junta, and he reported on them while they were in power, and they were committing atrocities. They were massacring people. They would disappear people, so there would never be a body. So they would just be like, "Oh, this person's just gone," even though they murdered them. And they targeted Rodolfo several times, and then he was assassinated while he was like mailing a piece that he wrote about some atrocious thing that they had done. And I think when I read about him in this book called The Shock Doctrine by Naomi Klein, he was just like briefly mentioned in it. And then so I like did more research into him, and I just was very inspired by his desire to pursue truth, and I wanted to embody that.
Yeah, and as the project kind of evolved, did the goals of the project evolve, and kind of as your mindset kind of shifted or changed over time, how has Project Walsh evolved?
I would say like trying to like when like kind of the embodiment of Rodolfo Walsh is to, I think, like speak truth to power, and the motto for Project Walsh is get the truth or die trying, and that was really what I was trying to do, and that's always kind of been the mindset, especially as like during the first trip to the West Bank. That was kind of where I came up with the motto, though, and I've kind of like put it into words. I kind of had it in my mind, and I think like the experience I had that really like kind of cemented that was last year I was in the city of Jenin, which is up north, where there's usually fighting going on in Jenin. There's a lot of like resistance fighters there, and they all right. I'll get to the point with this. So we were driving there. I had this taxi driver named Muhammad. He was like my friend at this point, my age, and we're driving into the city. This is like while the IDF is sieging the city, and we're on the main drag essentially, and we're driving to this hotel where all of the journalists stay, and it's a ghost town because there's like live combat going on just like a few hundred yards away, and we were driving down this road, and we're coming around a bend, and couldn't really see past it, and there was one kid on the side of the road that was like waving at us like, you need to stop. And then luckily the one guy in the passenger seat saw that was happening, and told Muhammad to slam on the brakes. Muhammad goes and talks to the kid, and if we had driven another like few hundred yards down this road, it was there was like an IDF, like not a checkpoint but kind of like encampment along the road. And Muhammad told me, like, if we had driven down that road, they would have seen two Palestinians in the front seat that probably would just open fired on us, no questions asked. So that kind of puts the fear of God into you and kind of makes you realize the stakes. And that, I think, that kind of like solidified that angle that I was talking about earlier with you got to be kind of like willing to put yourself on the line for this, because I think when people make life-threatening situations like an obstacle to the truth, or they just make death an obstacle to the truth, you can't shy away from it, or else I think those people then win.
Do you feel like your status as a foreigner gave you any like protected status or influenced the way that people treated you, or that the IDF could have treated you?
Obviously having an American passport doesn't hurt, but there are American citizens that are routinely killed in the West Bank. A lot of them are Palestinian American. There was last year while I was in the city of Jenin, there was an American citizen from Seattle. She was a Turkish American dual citizen, and she was shot in the head while she was. It was like after a protest, or actually it was around a protest. She was shot in the head. I remember reading about that, and that was in Beta, which is south of Nablus, which is up in the north of the West Bank as well. I tried to get there to like kind of document of some of what was happening, but it was I didn't know anybody there, and I kind of had a rule where if I didn't know somebody there, I wasn't gonna go because it's a little too dangerous. But yeah, so it can help in a pinch, but if there's guns going off, nobody's asking to see your passport. So and it would help if you got arrested. I would say I was able to not get arrested, thankfully, but and going through the Israeli checkpoints it helps. It does help get around, but in really intense situations, nobody's really asking for your passport.
What are some of the most impactful stories that you were able to document or just witness while you were there?
So I think the most all of the stories there, and all of the things you hear, and all of the people that you meet, you see that because we hear a lot that Israel occupies the West Bank, and that there is an apartheid system there, and we can use different words to describe it. I find that apartheid is perfectly descriptive of what's happening there, but it's essentially that there are two legal systems there, and kind of two like systems of life enforced by the Israeli government in the West Bank, and it kind of seeps into every aspect of Palestinian life. It is constant. It is overwhelmingly oppressive, and that was it was just every single story. It's like it would somehow come back to that. I think maybe the most impactful thing that I saw and the kind of the encapsulation of this apartheid that I'm talking about was when I saw Auda Hathaleen shot and killed right in front of me, essentially, by Yanon Levy, in what I can only call an act of terror. meant to inflict terror. So this was in the Palestinian village of Khair, which has been in that region since the 1950s. They are Bedouins who formed that village after they were expelled from what is now Israel, and in 1948. But so they've been there since the 1950s. In the 1980s, the Israeli settlement Carmel was built right next to them. And now the situation has been, and especially since October 7th, 2023, they've been inching into Khair, taking more and more land, using the legal system to their advantage, because that legal system essentially only affords Israelis political and civil rights. Palestinians receive nothing. So when there's, what will happen is Palestinians will be living on land like in Khair, and the land that they've legally owned, that they've never had any issue with, and then one day they will get a call or the military will show up and say, we are moving this fence in 1 meter to your property because you technically don't own it. And then there will be a huge legal battle or a very long legal battle that just kind of seeps money out of the Palestinians. And then they essentially always lose that. And so that's kind of the context that's been going on there. And the Auda is a internationally renowned Palestinian human rights activist. He helped, or he contributed to the film No Other Land. And I've met him. He was firmly a pro-peace guy. He was just a peaceful man. He believed in peaceful resistance from every interaction that I had with him. And that day, there was an Israeli construction company that was doing work on a plot of land that was right next to Khair's community center, where settlers a few months previously, and this is the day that I'm describing was July 28th, 2025. 3 months prior to that, some Israelis from the settlement of Carmel came and claimed like that plot of land essentially. Last year when I was there, you were able to walk onto it fine. Now when I got there and saw it, there was a kind of a big pole in the middle of the plot which had a bunch of cameras on it and a big Israeli flag on top, and then they had planted like an olive grove there. So you could, especially if you were Palestinian, I asked them like, well, what would happen if you walked on there? And they'd be like, we would expect them to just start shooting at us, or at the very least be arrested. So you couldn't walk onto the land anymore. And on that piece of land, there was a backhoe equipped with a jackhammer. I think it's called a hydraulic breaker. But essentially like a big jackhammer connected to a backhoe. It was doing work there, and it was really loud. We went to the community center. I was there with a few other foreigners. We were just kind of sitting and talking. And then we hear from a man named Ahmad who lives in Khair, and he yells at us. He's like, guys, we need to get out here right now. We need to document this. So I'm like, I get up. I only have my phone on me. I wasn't able to grab my camera. And basically that backhoe had begun just like destroying Palestinian property on Palestinian land. So they had crossed out of the staked property that they had taken, and it was running over olive trees that Palestinians depend on for income. The economy is very bad for Palestinians, especially Bedouins who rely on kind of agriculture. So sheep more so, but agriculture for sure. And so they're just destroying like their means of income. I had it on camera destroying a fence, and this was all. It was basically moving along this exact route to this not main gate, but a gate into Carmel. And the settlers of Carmel had apparently been threatening, and this is per the people in Khair. They had been threatening, saying, if you keep having internationals here with cameras, if you keep having journalists and activists, and if you don't let us build the path to the staked land that I mentioned earlier, from there to like the gate of Carmel, we're going to shut off your water, because they control Khair's access to electricity and water. So the backhoe was moving along that route. It destroyed a fence along that route. It destroyed a water line to bathrooms in the community center, all on camera. And at that point, it had obviously riled people up. There were people throwing stones at the backhoe. And it was armored. I mean, there were stones, but it was armored in the sense that all of the windows had like metal grates over them. And it was moving towards the gate, and then and this was all in the span of like 4 minutes. It got near to the gate, and I saw Yanon Levy walk in between kind of a crowd of people that had come up to the backhoe, and obviously in the backhoe. And I kind of thought in the back of my head, like, this guy probably has a gun since he's just walking up to a group of people by himself. And then like within half a second, I saw his handgun in his hand. He was kind of like wildly waving it around. I was there as a first-hand witness. Nobody attacked him. Nobody threw stones at him. They were kind of, I would say, trying to corral him kind of back into the Carmel, because they're right by the main gate. And trying to remember where I was at that. So they were trying to corral him back to the gate. And I on camera, one of the video that I'd taken, you can hear me go, he's going to kill somebody. And then literally moments later, he fired off shots, and one went directly over my head and killed Ada Hathaleen while he was yards away behind a fence recording the entire incident. And I didn't realize how close I was to the bullet until somebody retrieved a video from Ada's phone. It was posted on Salem, and I think a few major news outlets like posted the video to the to social media, I think. And like you can see the back of my head in that entire video, the back of my shirt. And I didn't realize really how close it was. But so like that shot went off. I was facing Yanon Levy at that point. So I had like started running when the first shot went off. And then I had my back to him, and I was running with actually somebody else who had happened to be there, a foreigner. And we were just running away, and he shot in our direction again. That was within 10 feet of me the second time. I found that out from there was a medical student from Ireland that who's also an American citizen. His name's Ty Kavanaugh. He has told this exact story to Democracy Now! And a few other news outlets. I know for sure he talked to Democracy Now! And he was doing first aid on somebody where actually while we were earlier in this whole mess, when that backhoe was demolishing the Palestinian property, we were like right in front of it. He had like the operator of it swung the jackhammer, and I was right in front of it, and it just grazed the back of my head, and then it smacked Ahmad in the back of the head. It knocked him over, and then after that we kind of got out of the way of it because we're like, okay, like he's willing to kill us. So Ty had been doing first aid on Ahmad like this whole time when the shots went off, and he was facing Yanon Levy so he could like see where the gun was pointed, and I like knew other shots had gone off, and then afterwards he was like, yeah, he like basically shot right at you guys again. But and then after that I kind of like regrouped myself, kind of had to pull it together a little bit, and then I walked to where Aldo was. I didn't know that he was there, that he had been shot, and I saw him bleeding on the ground. And I knew just from how thick the pool of blood was on the ground, and just just how people were reacting, that it was pretty dire. They moved his body to the gate into Carmel. I think he was still alive at that point. And once again, that medical student that I mentioned, I had actually like showed up to Umalkhair with him. So he was doing first aid on Auda, like up close to the gate. I had kind of stepped back a little bit at this point because the Israeli authorities had started to show up, like police, the army. And so they were waiting for an Israeli ambulance. I don't know exactly why they were waiting for an Israeli ambulance and why it had to come from that direction, but that was how it was playing out. They're waiting to get the gate open. We were standing back, and then the Ty was telling me right afterwards that Israeli authorities allowed settlers to come up and essentially jeer at the people who were doing first aid. Yonan Levy was standing over Ty while he was doing CPR on Auda. I saw it, and it was just he still had his gun in his hand. He was allowed to be there. Eventually, somebody grabbed him and told him to go away, I suppose. But there were other settlers that came up and were jeering at them. And then within the next few minutes, Ty and another American that a nurse that was helping Ty perform first aid, they told Ty to so by they I mean the the responding Israeli military and police. They told Ty stop, you need to get up and leave. And then they actually so the nurse that was standing right next to him, they arrested and deported her, which was absurd. And at this point, when they had told Ty to stop performing first aid, they told the rest of us they didn't tell us, they were throwing kind of flashbangs at us. Not quite a flashbang. I don't really know how to describe them. Everybody was calling them sound bombs, but crowd control tactic to get us into kind of this one fenced off area. And obviously had to comply with that. And so basically all the foreigners that were in Khair that day and everybody that lived in Khair that happened to be outside of their house, we are all kind of wrangled into this one specific spot. And I recorded and saw this happen. They brought out Yonan Levy after he just killed Auda for obviously not in an act of self-defense. And they allowed him to point out people to arrest while we were caged in this area. And then so he pointed out people, and then he'd point out somebody. A group of soldiers would come in and drag somebody out. It was always a Palestinian. And then while we were in there, they had soldiers come in and kind of just demand to see people's ID, all the foreigners specifically. I kind of slunk away into this guest house and was able to not have a picture of my passport taken, but I know I have a video of them interrogating Ty, and that I think that whole situation really just kind of is an encapsulation of the entire situation in many ways, because this is a situation that was deliberately provoked by the Israeli settlers that were doing construction. They destroyed property that the Palestinians know that they had no legal way of defending themselves, so they're doing whatever they can to get this to stop, which was the stone throwing. And then after instigating this rage, that the Yonan Levy used that as an excuse to kill somebody. And I think the big thing about it is that the Israeli side of the conflict and just the Israeli government is in the West Bank is in complete control of this situation, and that's just it's I kind of losing my train of thought here a little bit, but
no worries. But in that moment, and even the days after that incident happened, what was kind of going through your mind, and did you ever think about leaving? Because you were still there for another month or two after that point, right?
I did not think about leaving. It was really weird for the first days after that. I think I went one night without sleep, but I just kind of was this is kind of why I'm here, and the truth about this has to be told, and also that the people that live there deal with that every single day. If you try to get some sympathy from a Palestinian about something silly, you're not going to get it. So it was kind of just we needed to kind of pull it together. I talked with the other people that were there. Everybody was obviously pretty weird, but you just got to keep taking steps forward. And I didn't want to be silent after that, and I didn't want to be scared out of telling what I had seen. But
Yeah, and obviously you knew that there was a sort of danger aspect going into this. And you were also sort of seeking out situations of conflict so that you could be there to document. Did you expect that you would ever see someone get killed in front of you?
I learned, especially after the first year, that you never know what's going to happen in Palestine. So it didn't I knew that it was a possibility. I obviously didn't want that to happen, and I didn't think that it was going to happen that day for sure. But yeah, it just kind of sneaks up on you, and then afterwards it just kind of like hangs over your shoulder a little bit.
And you said multiple times that you were taking a lot of videos of this incident. What did you do with those videos, and how was kind of the response?
So, mainly what I've done with that video was I posted something to Project Walsh, like a report on what had happened. That was so far. That's what I've done with it. With Instagram and kind of any of that, like the short form video formats, the algorithms there are pretty hard to deal with, especially if you're reporting on any kind of conflict at all. You can kind of get into specific keywords, but it's hard to get traction, basically, especially when you're posting a video about somebody getting killed, no matter how professional you make it. So I wasn't exactly getting a lot of engagement with it, but in the back of my head, it was just kind of like, the point isn't really just to, kind of farm engagement. It's to just, report what's happening. So I kind of just try to brush it off.
Yeah, and putting these stories from your perspective out into the world. You're not trying to get famous from this, but you're just trying to share these stories. Do you plan on going back to Palestine?
So it's funny that you ask that. So I would like to, but to kind of go back to earlier, how I was mentioning that, like, how Israel is kind of in like absolute control of that territory in a lot of ways is so if you want to go to the West Bank, you have to go through Israel. Whether you go, like, even if you go through Jordan, the Jordan side, you have to go through an Israeli checkpoint to get in. And if you want to go through, obviously, the Israeli side, you land at Ben Gurion or you come up through Egypt. But obviously, through Egypt, you going through Israeli checkpoints. I went through Ben Gurion both times, and both times there's several levels of kind of interrogation that you go through to get to Israel. The first one is on at the gate to get on the plane to Israel. They question you and they go through your bag again after TSA had gone through it. And they're asking you, the first time I went, they were asking me how my parents met. They were asking me who bought my ticket. But it kind of read like a cop pulling you over and looking for any reason to search your car. They're asking you the same questions over and over again to see if it remains the same. And I think it goes beyond security in a lot of ways, because they'll like explicitly asking you, like, do you have Arab friends? Do you have any friends in Syria? Do you have any friends in Jordan? Do you support Palestine? Do you support Israel? At the time, I would just say, I'm not political. I'm just a religious tourist. That's the only reason I'm going. But it's very much a filter to anybody that would mention that they are going to go into the West Bank, because you might just be like, oh, well, I'm like allowed to go there. That's not part of Israel. But that isn't the case. Like, I was in contact with somebody that was going there the first year that was going before me, and I was talking to her a little bit, like what's your plan? I'm a little nervous and kind of trying to see what each other were doing. And she had gotten to, I think it was an airport in Germany, and she had gotten to the gate, and they went through her archived Instagram stories, and they saw that there was pro-Palestinian stuff that had been posted. So when that happens, when they deny you entry, they give you like this piece of paper that says like denial of entry to Israel. I think hers said that they like declared her an enemy of the state of Israel. So you really gotta like not fold when you're going through there. You gotta keep your story straight, and you can't mention anything about Palestine. Like, I could not mention like, oh, I'm going into the West Bank to document this situation. I immediately would have been denied access and turned away. And so it's like from the very get-go, it's undercover kind of guerrilla journalism to a degree. But so now that I've kind of been posting on Project Walsh and that I'm just talking to you guys, that could hurt my chances of going back. It's a little random though, because it like you could just keep your story straight, like I said, and not really mention any of that at the checkpoint going in. And maybe that day that person isn't really all that stressed out, or isn't really like just decided they're not going to interrogate everybody that day and give them the third degree, and they might just let you through. Or it could be you just spent like all that money to get there and all that time to get there, and they just turn you away. So that's part of, I think, like the fear tactic of it a little bit. But so I plan to try to get back there. Yes.
Yeah, and just going back to the killing of Auda and also just general media coverage of Palestine and of the conflict there, how do you feel like the media coverage has impacted the way that people perceive the situation there? And also, how do you feel like Project Walsh contributes to that?
So I think to give people, like, a lot of the major outlets credit, their coverage, I think, has gotten a little bit better since October 7th of just kind of the reality of what's happening. I think that a lot of Western journalism is there's a certain obsession with neutrality to the point of where you're no longer being neutral, where you're going to portray both sides of a conflict as kind of like these even teams. And there's a quote from there was the Middle East correspondent for The Independent for a long time, was a man by the name of Robert Fisk, a British guy, and he was kind of famous for the reporting he did on Lebanon in the 80s and also just Palestine. And he described it as, this is not a soccer match in the Middle East. This is a tragedy. And so when he said that, it's not these two teams that we're looking at. It's a system of oppression, and I think that that's kind of hard for a lot of news outlets to deal with and properly portray, especially since Israel is a client state of the United States. And but I think that that's slowly been getting a little bit better. Personally, though, while I was there, you don't meet a lot of Western journalists on the ground, let alone Americans. I met like a pair of French journalists while I was there, but mainly you just meet. Actually, and I met some Japanese journalists while I was there as well, like a week or so after Auda had been killed. And but it's mainly just Palestinian journalists. And then like I met like a photographer for Reuters, but it's so it's like you're dealing with a lot of these filters already, and then on top of that, there's nobody on the ground, and so the reporting is kind of always, oh, this is happening in this place in the West Bank, but you don't see it physically. And I think that was kind of what I was trying to do with Project Walsh, is I did a lot of stuff with like mapping and like showing different locations, being like, this is an actual place. These things are happening, like actual people. And I definitely tried to keep things like proportional, and also to combat that, because I've always seen that as an issue. But yeah, that's how I would kind of characterize the coverage that's going on so far.
Yeah, and I saw a headline the other day actually saying the UN called it a genocide in Gaza. Will Western journalists dare to? And I think it just goes to show how different the global stage is and different aspects of the global stage and how different people are viewing this conflict. How do you think that will continue to evolve over the next few years?
I would characterize that as a genocide. If the International Association of Genocide Scholars are going to call it genocide, I'm going to call it a genocide as well, among the myriad of other places that have called it a genocide now. I think that going forward, I can't tell the future, and anybody that claims to is lying, but I would say that hopefully we start to see a more realistic coverage of what's going on there, because I found that, and especially as Americans, I think we have a certain right to what's actually happening, to know what's actually happening there, considering the absurd amount of aid that we give to Israel. And I think that, quite honestly, a lot of, especially in the past decades, a lot of the information that we have gotten about Israel and their treatment of Palestinians is just blatant lies. And I think it's just blatant lies upon blatant lies, especially of what's happening in the West Bank, from what I've seen. And I would hope to see that I would hope that we see that start to change. I think we've been told a story of, a lot of this is in defense. Like you hear, like their military is Israeli Defense Forces, and from what have seen in the West Bank, almost the justification for almost everything, all of the draconian measures that they have, all of the incredibly invasive surveillance, that the justification is always security. It's always security. And that's just not true. It's about controlling the people that live there, and I think also just to make life miserable, and to take control of that land in a settler colonial project. And that's what's been happening from my observations, and it's also what Israeli politicians continually say all the time on social media. You can go and look at statements from Ben-Gvir or Smotrich about what they call Judea and Samaria, because they won't call it the West Bank, because that kind of has like a connotation that it's this like Palestinian. It has like a Palestinian connotation to it, so they won't even call it that. But they'll blatantly say like, we are going to take control of this land, and then now like the Knesset said they're going to annex it. I think the vote they had a while ago was kind of like a symbolic thing, but because the annexation of the West Bank has been going on for a very long time now, and that's I would hope that with like kind of the level of violence that we're seeing, that I would just hope that people kind of just start seeing reality as it's happening right in front of them. But because I mean, I would agree that a lot of places they use questionable language when it comes to describing that. But yeah, I would hope that trend would go in that direction.
Yeah, and I guess as a journalism student, and too, I'm also double majoring in journalism and political science. How has this experience kind of contributed to your education, or how has your education contributed to this experience? How do they kind of interplay between each other?
Okay, well, I have to say that learning how to use Premiere through some of the journalism classes really helped with at least the short form stuff for Project Walsh. I think definitely it helps to have an understanding of how like different governments and stuff work. I don't think you have to be a genius to like be there and kind of see what's happening, but I think like having a grasp of history definitely helps. And I think like the journalism skills definitely obviously really helped, like with interviewing and all of that stuff. But yeah, I would say it was more so the journalism side that kind of kicked in while I was over there.
Yeah, and you also mentioned other journalists who were there who were documenting this, or maybe more informal journalists documenting this. Did you take away lessons from people who had been there for longer? Yeah,
so I would like to first say that I'm not the only person that was like the Project Walsh reporting on Instagram, social media of what's happening there. I'm far from the first person to do that. There are tons of Palestinian journalists that do that, like Ala Hathalin, who is from Umm he is a journalist. And there's another, he's actually an Israeli citizen. His name is Andre. I don't know his full name. You can, I've met him a couple times, really cool guy, but he is very much kind of I wish I could do that to the level that he was doing, but I don't have an Israeli passport, so they would have just shot me in a lot of those situations. But he goes and is on the ground right in front of kind of the Israeli abuse of Palestinians. And I've seen videos where he's had guns pointed at him, and so he was definitely an inspiration in part. But yeah, he's one of those people on the ground that was doing that. He's a great example of that kind of journalism that started in the West Bank, just because I think that there's just a huge lack of coverage. You'll hear if there's a major Israeli military operation, you'll hear about it. If somebody Auda gets murdered, you hear about it, but you don't just hear about the day-to-day constant abuse. I was in a village called Kusra in the north of the West Bank, right south of Nablus, and I met a 13-year-old boy who around this time last year when he was 12, he was shot through both of his legs by an Israeli soldier, an Israeli settler at point-blank range while he was playing soccer. And he's this has caused him a permanent injury. Interviewing him was, I think, one of the most awful experiences I've ever had in my life, because he was really shy. His dad was there and he was okay with it. So I was let's just make this quick. So I just need what happened from him as kind of testimony. and I wanted to kind of throw up after that, because especially like as he's speaking in Arabic, and I had somebody translate for him, and he was saying that like he can't use the bathroom without being in pain anymore, and that just never leaves you once you've seen it. And it just kind of, again, just shows the absurdity of the violence that's being used there. And it's because I used the word terror attack to describe what happened when Auda was killed, and that's really what these are. I don't see any other explanation for it. I mean, specifically like the phenomenon of settler attacks on Palestinian villages, where the Palestinians were there far before the Israeli settlements were, and there's just these coordinated attacks where only Palestinians are killed, only Palestinians are injured, and it's over and over again. And there was actually in Duma, which is right next to Kusra, this year, a man by the name of Tamim Dawabshe was killed in an attack that was extremely similar to how Auda was killed, where you have the Israeli settlers who are legally privileged, and they can essentially do whatever they want. They can kill with impunity. They can kill American citizens, as they've had, with impunity. And so a pair of Israeli settlers walked onto what is Palestinian land that they legally own, and they assaulted a 14-year-old boy. So a group of people see this happen. They walk out, and they're like, you need to leave and stop assaulting this child. And then they shot and killed one of the people that had come to that on video. His name is Tamim Dawabshe. I spoke to his brother a few days after that had happened, and I had that on Project Walsh. I saw the like the place of mourning that they had, where people in like the Islamic tradition, it's you kind of just mourn for a certain period of time after somebody dies, especially in like a manner like that. And they had like the stretcher that carried him out after he had been shot, kind of propped up against the wall, covered in dried blood, and it's just. I think that's just kind of reinforces that kind of power disparity there. But if that answers your question.
Yeah, and I think as we're kind of nearing the end of this conversation, I kind of want to walk away with, what would you want people to learn from your experience, and what do you hope that they see after hearing all of these events?
I would say that just to pursue truth. I think go and try to see it for yourself, or if you can't do that, just to try to find the truth regardless, and also to read things critically. Whenever you see, think of it critically, and also to think critically about what is happening in Israel and Palestine.
Yeah, you mentioned when you were talking to that boy that it'll never leave you. Has this experience and the stories that you've heard and witnessed influenced sort of your perspective on life, or even your life goals moving forward?
Yeah, I think seeing the Israeli apartheid in the West Bank firsthand is it just I don't really know how to describe it, but there's just this certain kind of misery that comes with it, where everywhere you go, you're going through these checkpoints where there's a gun pointed at you for like during the whole experience, and just like it just becomes like in some cases like a life without hope, and it's really hard to forget that feeling and try to walk away from it when you know that your tax dollars contribute to it, and also that there's just so much kind of misinformation about it, and that like so many people kind of struggle to understand kind of these basic things that are going on because of all of the conflicting information that's going on, that goes around. But I think that it's that misery, that just, it kind of just stays with you, and it's because you just can't escape it. It's every single aspect of life there, from literally going to work, because what should be a 20-minute drive to work takes 3 hours because there's an Israeli checkpoint that decided to close that day, or because like somebody in your family got shot and there's nothing you can legally do about it because you don't have any rights under the legal system. And it's when you're just kind of like, everybody had a story there about how the Israeli occupation had affected them in one of these like awful ways, and just like it's just really hard to forget that. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all of your stories and all your experiences. yeah, it's been very informative and interesting just hearing your perspective on the conflict. That kind of concludes this episode of the Roundup. Thank you, Charlie. And I'm Jeremy Garza, managing editor for Mustang News.
And I'm Carly Heltzel, the news editor for Mustang News.
And I hope you all enjoyed hearing Charlie's stories.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.